We're going where?
Right this second, you and I are going live on the Weller's YouTube page.
All right, so I'm closing out all my stuff then.
And I will.
I don't want to be streaming to multiple places.
Yeah, right.
Too late.
I think we're good. Yeah.
All right. Are we? We're live?
Yep. Hi.
Hello. I assume we're live. I'm not yet.
We are live. Hi. Okay, folks, please forgive the delay in the beginning of this terrific event. There were some technical difficulties. We're going to take a few minutes, and Justin and I are just going to chit chat for a sec while we wait for people to show up. I'm going to drop you, Justin, the link right now.
Yeah. Yep.
And how are you doing this evening? You've been awful patient.
Thank you. I'm well. Yeah.
It's a beautiful day. And there you go. I just sent that. And we're awful grateful that you could be here with us, to share it with us. I'll mention this again once we get going, everyone, but this is indeed the day of release for Master Artificer. We're pretty stoked about this, Justin. Your last one still really does well in the store. Our patron base really responds to your writing. That's
a relief. That's a comfort.
And we get asked about you all the time. So it's great that you are back. How are things up in your neck of the woods today?
Good. Weather's good. Evening's pleasant. I don't have dogs with porcupine quills currently. That's something I've been dealing with. I live on a street called Porcupine Loop, and this is the time of year when the porcupines come out, and we've had all 3 of our dogs get porcupine quills. So it's been kind of exciting the last month.
Don't those take forever to get out?
Well, they come out very quickly if you pull on them, but the dogs tend to not like that.
So. Poor things. How old are you dogs now?
So we've got a 6-year-old Great Dane, a 4-year-old Saint Bernard, and we are fostering a dog that just got adopted, and she's a Saint Bernard Great Dane mix.
You like the small dogs?
How'd you guess? No, we like the big ones here.
I mean, how much does your Bernard Mastiff mix weigh?
165 pounds.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's only like 5 pounds less than me. That's insane. I have a Bichon. I go the other way. He weighs 19 pounds, but he's a sweetheart. Okay.
I love the small ones and the big ones. So
all dogs are good. Anyone that gets a dog in their life, that day is a little bit better. I don't know what I would have done without dogs in my life. They've been hugely important to me. Well, okay. Let's see what we got. Hi, everybody. I'm Lane. I'm the events coordinator for Weller Bookworks, and I'd like to welcome you to this virtual launch for Justin Call's second book in the Silent God series, Master Artificer. A couple of things. I'm coming to you from my living room in Salt Lake City. Where are you coming to us from, Justin?
I am in my office in, I guess, well, I tell people Park City, and technically that's not exactly true, because when I come up the mountain, I'm in Park City, but once I get to my spot on the mountain, I'm in Colville. At least that's what they say I am. But I still say Park City. So
I love Colville. My people come from Echo, and so I spend a lot of time in those necks of the woods. It's so pretty up there. Okay, well, anyway, here we are for this rather casual event, as we tend to keep them when they're virtual. I'd like to tell everybody, though, we have an eye towards getting things back into the store. It's going to be a little while yet, but I want to let you know it's in the hopper, and we're going to come back sooner, I believe, than we thought we may. So keep an eye out towards that end. It'll be nice to see all of you in the store for these events once again. The event we had for Justin was, the last event was really great. I think that we had quite a good turnout for that, don't you?
I think so. I think there was like 70 people, I think.
There were, yeah. I think
There
that's
was a lot of people. Yeah.
but, you know,
I remember we had people flying in from like from my high school, like my old Spanish teacher came, and like friends, and it was great. It was a really great event. People from Idaho, people from all over. It was
you
good.
must be a pretty nice guy to have your Spanish teacher from high school flying out here to see your book launch.
She must be a pretty nice person to come see the book launch for one of her Spanish students.
Yes,
That's what you mean to say.
well put. What's her name?
Ms. Helwig.
Hey, Miss Helwig, here's a shout out to you. Sorry you can't be in person with us. Hopefully you're out there virtually with us right now. But yeah, I thought the event for Master of Sorrows went really well. And you know, it's too bad because you had we had other things going on. You were able to have socialize and have some food and all of that stuff. So it's unfortunate that we can't do that virtually, but I do like the fact that with virtual events you can have a much broader audience. You know, anybody you know anywhere can watch.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. So anyway, I've got couple events I want to talk about here before we get going. One of them is we're still doing Lit Knit, but it is still virtual as well. It's our knitting circle. We do it every other, the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month. If you would like to join it, all you need to do is email Catherine Weller at Catherine, that's Catherine with a C, at wellerbookworks.com. Doesn't cost anything. You just show up. If you have some wine around, you can drink that and knit your sweater or whatever you're working on, your sampler, and join us for that every second and fourth Wednesday. And then we've got an interesting event coming on the 15th of June. This is going to be from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock Mountain Standard. It's going to be an event with Lin-Manuel Miranda as he launches the new book, In the Heights, Finding Home. It's sort of the biography of the show In the Heights, which is having its motion picture debut this summer after being, of course, the Broadway hit. So he's going to be doing a virtual event. The tickets are $40. That includes the book, and you can purchase that through our website. Just go to the events page. And I'm going to drop, while Justin is reading, I'm going to drop the links to where you can purchase Master of Sorrows and Master Artificer into the chat. We've been speaking so far, and will for a little while longer, with Justin T. Call, author of Master Artificer, Book 2 of the Silent Gods. He's a graduate of Harvard and author of Book 1 of the series. And I can't remember, is there a third coming?
There will be more than 3, yeah. So we've done two so far, and Master of the Fallen's the third book that I'm writing right now. And there is a fourth untitled book that, at the very least, will be included in this series for the tetralogy. And ideally, if I've done my job right, then that will be the last book for this first series, which is really a series within a series. So I have 12 books, I have 3 arcs that I've developed with at least 4 books for each arc. Um, People can't accuse me of having a small amount of world building in my books because I
I
did
mean,
way too much before I started writing.
good Lord, how long did you work on all that stuff before you sat down to write?
I tell people 15 years, which is both true and not true because it's not like I spent every day of those 15 years working on the series. Weeks and months would go by, and it was just something that I was working on for fun. But it's true that I did have the idea for the series over 15 years ago, and at this point, it's closer to 20. And I slowly aggregated all of these ideas and the culture and the people and the mythology and the magic and the characters and the story, and kind of pieced them together in a way that felt cohesive and entertaining and authentic and satisfying. So yeah, I say 15 years, and I think that's probably the most honest answer. I think.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I was thinking, I'm a playwright, and I was thinking about my most recent play and how that compares to in world building to sort of multi novel series. And boy, it's different, but holy crap, the detail that you go through in all of this, it's to be commended. Anyhow, this is Justin. He's a graduate of Harvard, and he's the CEO of Broomstick Monkey Games. You want to say something about them real fast, Justin?
Yeah, so sure, why not? Broomstick Monkey Games is my board game company, and me and a couple of friends put it together to, well, we all like games, and before my fantasy series took off, I was very deeply invested in the board game community, and I'm less so now because I've been so busy writing, and I'm much more heavily invested in the writing community right now. But I still love board games. I was the curation director for the Boston Game Makers Guild the first year that the Game Makers Guild was formed, which has like 300 plus members, and they meet every couple weeks and get together and play test board games. And so, very deeply invested in that. Really enjoyed it. I love understanding games and rules and understanding systems, but not like computer systems, like systems that involve that you can game, so to speak. I love finding opportunities, and that includes social engagements with people, getting to understand how people work, how people think, and that's one of the reasons why I love writing too. It's all about storytelling, but I'm a creator and a storyteller, and board games is one of the ways that I tell stories. So we had this game that was called Royal Strawberries that we sort of developed, and then eventually we did a miniature version of that game called Imperial Harvest that we published in 2015, I believe. And we did a very small print run, and we still have some copies of that game actually. But we don't really go out and advertise it and sell it at all because we've all become very busy with our own lives. And we still have Royal Strawberries that we developed, which at some point, maybe after the fourth book, we will produce. And Easter egg, if you read Master Artificer, you will find a game called Bloodstones in the game, which is, I wouldn't even say loosely based. I would say closely based, almost identically based to the rule set for Imperial Harvest and Royal Strawberries. So
Ah,
it's a nod, an homage, and an Easter egg for those that know the game, play the game, or know me and my background in board gaming. And I never let these things go just for a little bit of world building, just to stick it in there. I always try to find an opportunity or a good reason for it. And for this, it's a tool to illustrate one of the characters developing their ability to think, strategize, and go beyond the character they were in book one and become somebody who's a little bit more worldly, a little bit more who thinks farther ahead than the immediate present. So it's a great opportunity to sort of promo one of my games, but it's a tool that I use to illustrate a character's development within the series. So
that's cool. I dig it. What's the website for that game?
we used to have we used to have a website. Now you can just go to my website. So if you go to justintcall.com, there is a section there for board games, and you can find Imperial Harvest in addition to my books, which are in the books section. But yeah, they are there.
Sweet. Okay, well, I'm good. As I said, I'll drop links into the two books that you can purchase from Wellers as you are doing your reading. And I guess maybe now's the time to do that. if you would care to. I'll go dark and quiet, and when you're finished, I'll come back and read you some questions from the chat. Also, before we get going, anybody
please
out
post
there,
questions from the chat.
post questions. We'll get to all of them. I will read them after the reading, but yes, please post, and we'll see you later.
Hopefully the questions pop up as they come up, as opposed to, I know there's a delay between when the video is posted and when it goes live. So after I'm done with the reading, we'll be able to look at all of those questions and answer them in depth. So where I'm reading right now, if you have your copy of Master Artificer, or Artificer if you're in the US as opposed to the UK, I keep going back and forth on how I choose to pronounce it, but I'm on page 319, I believe. I think that's where I chose to start. So I hesitate to read too much of my books because I don't want to bore people, but this is my virtual book launch. So I've got about 2.5 pages I'm going to read. And I don't know how long that's going to take. Probably 5 or 10 minutes. Hopefully not 10. So we'll start. Annev froze, his attention suddenly fixed on the mist surrounding him, on the slow pulse of the cold-blooded creature stalking toward him, trying to outflank him from a nearby side street. His first instinct was to run, to flee back into the darkness and rely on his boots to save him. But Shaltar would keep tracking him, using his reptilian senses to sniff Annev out, exactly as Annev had sensed the location of his friends. Annev's right hand slid to the flamberge at his hip, and he itched to unstrap Toothbreaker from his back. Instead, he waited. He focused on the magic of the copper band, allowing it to amplify his senses, then tapped into the power of the silver-gold Codivora ring. He wasn't sure how to access its magic, but he tried to let his mind relax while thinking of Shaltar flanking him, approaching from the side. The lizard man preparing to spring, leaping into the air, his powerful legs extending to stun Annev with a kick to the head. An instant later, imagination became reality. The Kyokum leapt from his place in the shadows, legs extended, and Annev turned to meet him, sword unsheathed. Just before the two collided, Annev closed his eyes and forced retribution to burst into white-yellow flames. Shaltar hissed, open-mouthed, as his hands rose to cover slitted eyes. At the same instant, Annev dodged, evading the kick and slashing the lizard man's thigh. Hot metal met black scales, the wavy blade searing and sparking as it cut into the creature's flesh. Shaltar howled and crashed into the wall. Annev pivoted, his sword still extended. Summoning the full heat of the flamberge, Annev shifted its colors from yellow to blue and thrust his blade at the fallen Shinar, attempting to skewer him. Instead, Shaltar's claws swung outward, throwing the blade wide of the mark. A second clawed hand swung at Annev's chest, and he blocked it with the hand of Kios, its gold metal glowing fierce in the darkness. He tried to grip the monster's forearm, tried to break it as he had the Inishtool slaver's shin in the bottomless cup. But Shaltar was too fast. His tail whipping around Annev's ankle and dragging him to the ground, the monster struck, twisting so his jaws snapped down on Annev's shoulder. Annev screamed as the glistening fangs clamped down, trying to pierce the dragon scale cloak. The artifact held, though the mounting pressure was agony. Trusting the artifact to protect him, Annev smashed his golden fist into the lizard man's skull. Shaltar flew backward, the force of the blow ripping out several of the teeth trapped in the dragon scale cloak. Annev sprang up, watchful for Shaltar's tail. The lizard man rolled to his feet, his monstrous form stretching to its full height before hissing in challenge. Annev had his sword at the ready, his gold prosthetic poised like a vambrace or a buckler. Shaltar eyed the two artifacts, his slitted eyes shifting between Retribution's flames and the eerie glow of the hand of Kios. His posture shifted, relaxing. "We do not need to fight," the monster growled, chewing his words. "Come with me now. Leave your friends, your false priest." "I think we've had this conversation before," Annev said, his attention focused on Shaltar's bobbing tail. "I'm not going with you, and I'm not leaving my friends." "But you have already left them, chosen one. They are dead, or will be dead. Let them go, and come with me." "Come where?" Annev said, stalling as he tried to predict Shaltar's next attack. He remembered the shop's tattered awning then, and a plan formed in his mind. The Kyokum gave a wide grin full of poisoned needles. It depends. On what? On whether Dortafala will match the price of the Rokosh family. The beast sprang forward, his tail snapping for Annev's sword arm as his clawed hand swiped at the boy. Annev parried one blow with his golden hand and spun retribution to slash at the mercenary's tail. The blue-white blade sizzled through the black scales, scything 3 feet of flesh from the monster's body. At the same instant, Shaltar's other hand raked across Annev's throat, his hooked fingers ripping chunks of flesh from Annev's neck. Before the Kyokum stumbled backward, surprised and unbalanced by the bloody loss of his tail. His throat burning, Annev hacked at the awning overhead. The soot-stained canvas fell atop the lizard man, entangling him. And Annev hacked again, his flamber slicing clean through one of the monster's arms. With a tremendous roar of frustration and pain, Shaltar sprang up from the street and landed on the roof of the shop, evading Annev's killing blow. Another roar followed, and then the charred and bloody canvas fell to the street. Annev listened, waiting for another attack, but instead he heard the Kyokum retreat across the rooftops, his reptilian screeches fading with the scent of his cold blood and sour venom. Annev was hazy from the pulsing mists of scarlet. He sheathed his sword and slapped his hand to his neck, the blood running freely through his fingers. I'm bleeding out, fast. Kios. He was going to die out here. That's the reading for today. I read a little bit more of the next page.
That's good. I mean, I was expecting more, and I'm sure everybody else is hungry for more. I'm going to stay disembodied while I read some questions from the chat. First, just want to mention, yes, please leave your questions in the chat. I see we have a few here, and I will start asking those in a moment. Also, we do have a number of signed copies at the store that Justin came by and signed the other day. He makes sure each is special, and so you can, when you order on the website, that's we have some signed copies there. And I'm sure that if you end up getting one and are local, we can figure out a way to get those signed too. I hope. I'm not sure when you're going along, like gallivanting on your West Coast adventure, but
if you have copies that people have ordered, I will come to Weller Bookworks and I will sign them. So long as I am anywhere I can come here and do it, I will. And for now, I will be here for the least until the end of June. So anybody who gets in any orders now, I will sign those, and I will be sure to add some fun things to it.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. Thank you. And let's get to some questions. I'm going to start with Richard's question here. He says, Justin, love book 1. Was it difficult selling the idea of telling the fall of a main character?
No. I think people want to see that. I think people look forward to seeing that. Now, if you pitch it as somebody who is a hero who's falling, I think that's a little bit more difficult. People don't like seeing tragedies. Some people like seeing tragedy. And forgive me as my green screen slowly changes because the light outside is changing as we shift to dusk. But I decided I wanted to put my mat back here because it's more interesting than my wall. To answer that question more specifically, for the Dark Lord approach, is it really a tragedy when you're calling the protagonist a Dark Lord? I think there's a different point of view, a different perspective. It's almost like when the fall occurs, you have achieved what you promised, and it's a sort of victory. It is an opportunity for the hero to have achieved what presumably he was set out to do, even if he or she didn't expect to be the Dark Lord. When they reach that point, they have fulfilled their arc. It may not be an arc like this, it may be an arc like that. But I think because of the pitch, people are expecting it to be semi-tragic, but they're also expecting some heroics. They're also expecting drama, and they're expecting Annev to overcome challenges that will be sufficient for somebody who will become the Dark Lord. So I think all of that makes it more exciting, because it's less about this character's fall only, and more about also their rise to power, their rise to to actualization, I think. So that's exciting. People wanted it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably exists in all of us a little bit. We all want to watch that happen a little bit, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, fantasy is really not always, a lot about wish fulfillment. And we see a hero who often is weak or unable to do the things that we can do. Then they rise above that and they become superhuman. They become this paragon of power or virtue, whatever, depending on the story. They become this person we aspire to emulate or become. And that's empowering. And I think at the same time, we often like looking at anti-heroes and even villains because they're doing things that we know we're not supposed to do. And we kind of sometimes we want to do those things. So it's a wish fulfillment of seeing this person, this character achieve what we would be too afraid or too opposed to doing. And so one of the challenges in that is for Annev specifically, I'm trying to bring everybody to that point and still have empathy for him. I'm trying to have him be a character we all potentially feel like we could be, that he has some kind of resonance with us. He won't resonate with everybody, so that's impossible. But ideally, for my target audience, you will find yourselves carried along by his narrative. And when you get to the end of the 4 books, you'll say, I would have been a Dark Lord too if I'd been in his situation, and I'm quite pleased with the outcome of these events. So,
okay, so our next one, and we're going to hear a couple from Sean here. His first question starts with a statement: Master of Sorrows was your thesis. How different was it to write Master Artificer? Are you calling it Artificer then? You don't care, right?
So as I said, before my book came out, I was calling it Master Artificer everywhere, everything. However, since it's come out, and it came out first in the UK on May 6th, everybody's been calling it Master Artificer. And, US to UK, our population's bigger, but world to US, that population's bigger. And I think there's going to be more people calling it Master Artificer. And to be fair, Peter Kenny, who does a fantastic narration for the book, for both Blackstone as well as for Golance, he also calls it Master Artificer. So I feel like I'm going to just be carried away by the public pronunciation, by the majority. So I may have to just adopt Master Artificer instead of Master Artificer. It's a cleaner sound, I suppose.
It is. Okay, so Master of Sorrows was your thesis. How different was it to write Master Artificer?
It was very different. So, so I'll just show that this is, my wife told me I should share this. So if you look at this is me 9 years ago celebrating me turning in this thesis, Master of Sorrows. So that's me at Harvard. I was the receptionist for the president of Harvard, which most people don't know. But at the time I turned in my thesis, and it was a big deal. It was a big book, which I posted pictures of on Twitter. And I've got sitting over here in the corner. It's huge. But I outlined all that, like I said, for years, for over a decade. And I had a lot of time to plan it out. And one of the biggest revelations in writing Master of Sorrows was, oh my gosh, I've outlined too much. This isn't 1 book. This is 3 books. This isn't a series. This is a series of series. Oh my gosh, what have I done? I guess I just have to keep going. So I did. And Master Artificer, if we're going to go with the pronunciation, that was, as I've said on my Goodreads post, I knew this was going to be one of the hardest books to write, because book 1 was about establishing the foundation and primarily just making people empathetic with Annev, his position, his situation, the world he's in, and planting the seeds for what's to come. Book 2 is about carrying people from that point towards something darker and having people go along with it. And it's hard because you're trying to balance the change and the shift in his character with actual evil actions, objectively, subjectively evil. And you can't do that too quickly or too slow, because if you do it too fast, people will say it's not authentic to the character. And if you do it too slow, it's boring. And I've had people accuse me of both things for this book, which I knew would happen. which tells me maybe I'm doing it exactly right. And I hope I'm doing it exactly right because I want people to feel like this is the natural progression. This is the natural outcome of Annev being who he is and the world he's in and the choices he's forced to make. And I want them to get the satisfaction of seeing a true Dark Lord become the Dark Lord and understanding how they got there. That was challenging. It's also super challenging dealing with more points of view. Master of Sorrows just has the one, and it's a small setting in the small village. And so, as I say again in my Goodreads post, which I encourage everybody to read, my sort of private review for Master Artificer, I say these are my goals when I set out. I want to show the world because I didn't show very much of this that's behind me. I only showed this like tiny speck that basically occurs here. And Master Artificer goes over here and down here and over here and it even goes like way over there, which we can't see because the map's not big enough. And it goes to another realm. There's a couple realms. It's just crazy the amount of stuff that I had to put in here in order to cover everybody's stories. Myjun, Kenton, Finn, Annev, Theron, Titus. Everybody's evolving and showing them, giving everybody enough page space so they can evolve authentically was a challenge. As you can see with the size of the book, I mean, it's you could kill people with one of these things. So that was a challenge, super hard. And I ended the book with some cliffhangers, simply because the characters had reached an arc in their development where they had achieved what they needed to achieve for the book. And I could have stuck in some more exciting plot points, some more big battles, things like epic things that happen at the end of Master of Sorrows. But I knew that if I did, I would be pushing the story, number one, much further than I should. And number two, it wouldn't be honest to their character development, only to the story. I would be paying service to the story or the plot and less to the characters. So that was difficult for me to say I need to end here because they've all reached a new stage of growth. And the next stage of growth needs to happen in the third book.
Okay, Justin, our next question comes from Heidi, who asks, do you ever use people you know as models for your characters?
This is a planted question from my mother-in-law, Heidi. Hello, Heidi. Thank you for tuning in. I'll give a shout out to a couple people too, as long as I'm at it. So I know I've got family and friends tuning in. Heidi's here. Some of my other friends and family. Mark Purcell is one of my brother-in-law. He's also one of the owners of Broomstick Monkey Games, my board game company. I think I saw, yeah. So Nea, who's over here, posted a really great review of my book, which I just barely shared with Blackstone. And it was fantastic. It was really, really wonderful. Go read it on Goodreads. I'll pitch that. So getting back to Heidi's question, I have a page on Facebook that is, of course I have a page, but there's a specific question I asked a few years ago where I said, would anybody like me to include you in my book? Like your name, not you as a person, though I hold out potentially using some of your character traits, either physical or, non-physical. But I need to have permission to do whatever I want with your name. So I could potentially turn it into a villain that is absolutely horrible, and you would be embarrassed to have your name attached to that person. I may change your name to the point where it's not recognizable. I may use your name exactly as it is spelled and as it is presented on your driver's license. It's a gamble. So if you want to give me permission to use your name, then I will stick it in. It could be a major or minor character. I make no commitments, no promises, but if you put it on this list, then I will use it as a resource. And if I find an opportunity to use your name, I will include it in the book. And I have done that with probably over 100 people now. So there's a lot of Easter eggs in the book. And if you know me or know my friends, then I can guarantee you will spot some familiar names. But if you know nothing about me or my friends, you will just be reading a fantasy novel and enjoying yourselves.
Okay, we're back to Sean, who says, did you have the idea for the bird motif when you came up with the original idea for the series, or did it come to you while writing Master of Sorrows?
It came to me while writing Master of Sorrows. So there's a part in Master of Sorrows where there's a prophecy about 4 birds, and it talks about the 3 avatars who have been sent to murder Janek and murder Duvarek, one of the teachers from the academy, and to steal the Rod of Compulsion. And it names them as the let's see if I get these right. The magpie, which is Annev, and then the kestrel, the heron, and the rook. And the kestrel is Finn, and the heron is Kenton, and the rook is Soja Rokas, who which her name means sooted rook, and she is a thief and assassin who comes in. Really don't find out much about her until Master Artificer, and then she has kind of her own point of view thread, small, but also it's paired with fins, so you get to see more of her and who she is and her family and her motivations for stealing the rod and all that great stuff. So the 4 birds made sense within the context of Master of Sorrows, and that was a fun theme. And then of course I had Anna was already the phoenix mentioned, so this and that came first, really. So the phoenix motif came first, and then the 4 birds came a little bit later during Master of Sorrows. And then when we were talking about covers for the book, I originally was talking about, this is ironic, kind of a funny aside, but I was asking the people at Golantz, my UK publisher, if we could do a fist that was the hand of Chios, and we could do an illustration on the fist that was what is on the hand of Chios, which includes a flaming anvil, and above that is the hammer of Chios, which I describe as a war falcon, which is really a war hammer with a hook on one end and a spike on one end, and then the hammer. And so I laid out all those details, and I said, hey, can we do this? And the illustration that they ended up giving me, number 1, was not exactly what I was hoping for. The hand looked less like a gauntlet, more like, well, it was kind of a feminine hand, actually. So I thought, this is not going to work. This is not conveying what I want. And they said, well, let's take this symbol. And I also noticed they used a falcon, an actual falcon, instead of this warhammer that was above the anvil. And I said, no, this is not what I asked for. Nobody looked at my description. Oh, no. But it wasn't a bad illustration. And I told them, if you're going to stick a bird above a flaming anvil, it really should be the phoenix, because that's Annev. In fact, maybe we could go with that. So we talked a bit, and then we took that original illustration that was on the back of the hand and put the phoenix above the anvil with the fire, and basically what you see on the cover now. And it was just like, we all knew this was it. This was good. And so we had Master of Sorrows, Master Artificer. Well, I already had the magpie bird from the first book, which I was like, I could play with this. We already have this bird above the anvil. Let's do the magpie. I really want to do the magpie because we're playing with the dichotomy of black and white and moving from being a hero to a villain. And so I said, please, let's do a magpie. We'll do this sword and the anvil, and because he's artificing, he's creating new artifacts. This is going to be good. So we did that. They went with me. They agreed. They're like, great, let's do it. And they said, could we do this with birds for the rest of these in the anvil? I was like, yes, exactly. That's what I want. I want to keep this going. So I won't spoil things for the other books, but we'll be keeping the same theme. So I think it's fun for patterns are fun, right? This is one of the reasons why we read books, is to look for patterns. Even in children's books, they're comforting. Symbolism that keeps coming up is comforting. And so I try to stick with as much of that as I can without being irritating, I guess. So I look forward to seeing what people think of the other books.
We're going to stay with Sean here for a second. You'll see in the chat right here in this break is where I have left the links for Master of Sorrows and Master Artificer for on the Weller Bookworks pages. So those will take you right to there. Sean asks, any plans to commission characters of the main cast?
Commission characters of the main cast. I'm not sure I understand the meaning of that question. Commission characters of the main cast.
Any plans to commit? Well, actually, it says character singular. Sorry. Any plans to commission character of the main cast? I'm assuming that's plural. Let me. Hey, Sean, would you like to elaborate a bit on that question?
While he elaborates, we can jump to somebody else.
Yeah, we will. Nea.
I'm because I can guess, but I'd rather not spend time guessing.
No, I'm with you. We'll go to Nea. I get the feeling from these two books that everything ends where it begins. Will we be back to the academy in book 3 or book 4? Smiley face.
Do I have to say now that I've laughed about it? Book 1, we get the academy. Book 2, we get Kenton's experiences at the academy. And, well, people are leaving what's left of the academy. There's no reason to come back, right? You'll see a little bit of the academy in book 3. And you will definitely see there's an important scene that happens in book 4 that is the academy, and what it is and what it contains is essential to certain events in the 4th book. So you'll see some of the academy. I wouldn't say it ends at the academy, but I would say that, yeah, full circle. I like things like that. They're comforting. So yeah, that's probably a good instinct.
I'm just going to start burning through these because, not surprisingly, you've got a lot of people who like to hear what you have to say about stuff. He meant plans to commission character art of the main cast.
Oh, I see. So thus far, Blackstone and Gollancz, and really Gollancz is my main primary publisher, does the edits, and they've commissioned Patrick Knoll to do the Patrick Knowles, I believe, to do the artwork for the cover. Everything else you see in the book is stuff I've commissioned. So the maps I commissioned, the illustration of the magic system, which appears at the end of. Let's see, do I have it here? I should have put it here. There's Master of Sorrows. So I've got my, I'm just going to get up because I've got my headphones attached. I'm just going to get up from my computer and grab it. So the magic system that you see in Master Artificer, and this is something I'm really proud of. I did commission this, and this is to answer your question. I don't think my publisher will ever be commissioning artwork for the characters, so that would be me. And I don't think there's a need to commission any artwork for the characters because of the descriptions in the book. Here's the magic system that I commissioned. Which is, very. If you read Brandon Sanderson's books, it has a very strong Brandon Sanderson vibe to it, which was intentional because I think he does great work with his magic systems, and I've put an equal amount of time at least into imagining my own. We think about our magic systems in a very similar way, but speaking specifically to characters, no. I won't be commissioning any artwork, but I would love to see artwork. If there are other people who want to commission artwork or make their own artwork, I would love that. I would absolutely love to see that. At one point, I thought about commissioning somebody to make a costume of Annev's clothes at the end of book 1, at the end of book 2, just to kind of see how he evolves. But that would be kind of expensive. But it would be super cool to cosplay as some characters. And I would love to one day see the artwork for that fan art, and I would love to see people cosplaying as characters. That would be so cool as a creator, as a fantasy author, to see people who love your characters enough to take the time and energy and effort to do that. So I won't do it myself because I've got books to write and worlds to build, and I want to leave it up to you to kind of imagine exactly how they would appear. And if I commission somebody to do it, I feel like that's putting my personal "this is how they look" stamp on it. And I think there's enough details in the books to allow it to be what it is.
Staying with Sean, moving down the list here, what books were the biggest influence on this series, if any? Was there a specific writing style you were trying to emulate with these books?
No. I have a lot of influences, and I think one of those other questions is who are your biggest literary influences? So I'm not trying to emulate one person or one style, but I would say that there are things that I really like from certain authors, which I want to have be in my own books because they've influenced me so much. Brandon Sanderson is one of those examples where he does a lot of little things that I appreciate, that I see, that I recognize, that I understand, and which resonate with me as an author. So naturally, I've incorporated a lot of those things in my books. The hard magic systems is an example of that, where I have had a magic system since the beginning, since the very beginning, 15, 20 years ago. And I have pushed it farther because I've seen what Sanderson was able to do with his own systems. And I said, wait a second, I can do better than this. I can add more costs to this. I can be more detailed and more specific about how this works. And there's a danger in going too far, which again, Sanderson has said, he only really details like up to 70%, and the other 30%, he wants to leave enough wonder there that people can appreciate his books and not turn it into a science experiment, which people have accused him of. And I thought, that that resonates with me too. So I've said in my own books, for example, that when I talk about my magic systems, there is a lot of hard rules, but at the same time, characters will often contradict each other when they describe it, and because they only understand one facet of the magic. And I've also described magic as art, magic is beauty or truth, and how these are all facets of magic. So in that respect, is beauty and art subjective or objective? Is there more than one truth? I think truth is singular, but at the same time, objective art and objective beauty, difficult to describe. So I think magic's the same way. There's a specific way that it works, but you could have more of a blood talent or more talent or skill in a specific thing, or work really hard at something. And it's the same way with any kind of art, any kind of talent. You might be naturally gifted at something, but that's kind of a magic of its own. And you might work really hard at something and develop a skill, which is also a sort of magic. And these are all analogies for the magic in my book. Even the elements. So that's not a writing style, but it also is, because it's an element of world building. When it comes to exactly how I approach tone, dialogue, character, setting, description, those things that we would assume would be more of a traditional writing style. I do still adopt more of the workman-like prose that Brandon Sanderson is known for, partially because it's easier and I've got so much going on that if I spend forever trying to make my prose as beautiful and lyrical as somebody like Patrick Rothfuss, who I also love, then my books will take as long as Patrick Rothfuss to write, and which is an inside joke for those who know Mr. Rothfuss. I love Pat, and I hope and I look forward to reading his third book when it comes out. But he spent, over a decade writing the third book and getting it ready, and I don't have the time to make my language be that beautiful. I think what I do and how I write my books is sufficient. So I just try to stay out of the way. I come from a screenwriting background where you do a minimum amount of description for things in order to convey the idea. And yet at the same time, I know that I speak, just like now, too much about things. And I really have a hard time pulling back when I'm talking about world building, which people have praised me and damned me for in the same breath, because I'm so excited to share it with people. And I think in that respect, my books are a little dense in comparison to some people. But at the same time, a lot of people have said it's because of the language and the style of writing that I have adopted. My books are super easy to read. They're not dense. they move from one page to the next. So again, I find myself in between two opposite opinions, and I think I've probably done everything correctly. If there are two different opinions that are conflicting, it means not everybody agrees that I've done it badly, and it would be better if everybody agreed that I did it well. And there are some of those things. But I think in regards to my writing style, it's dry, maybe a little, a tiny bit of humor dropped in. It's also a little bit dark, maybe even brutal, visceral. I definitely feel like I can describe certain scenes easier, like fighting, violence. Those things come to me naturally. Describing a character's thoughts, I'm an introspective person, but that's a lot more challenging for me to do those things more concisely. So again, writing style, specific style. I'm evoking and calling on a lot of people: David Eddings, Patrick Rothfuss, Brandon Sanderson, R.A. Salvatore, Fritz Lieber, some sword and sorcery, some grimdark, mostly epic fantasy, traditional epic fantasy, but also elements of horror. So I say I write dark fantasy. And I think that's true. I think if you come to me for epic fantasy or grimdark, you may be disappointed. But if you come to me for a dark epic fantasy or a grimdark epic fantasy, something in between, I think you're going to be pretty pleased with it. So that's sort of my writing style.
He wondered further in that same thought whether there were other media sources that influenced the Silent God series.
Yeah, just like, well, my writing right now is the Silent God series, and there are other kinds of media that influence my books. Some of them are silly and hard to pin down, like watching He-Man or Conan the Barbarian when I was 5 or 6 on TV, early morning cartoons. Some are a lot easier, like, for example, role-playing games with my friends. There is a character class called a spell filcher from Dungeons and Dragons, which is a character that is a thief who's good at stealing magical items, stealing magic, fighting wizards, for example. And the concept of an avatar kind of spawned from that. The idea of a character who doesn't necessarily have magic themselves, but is a fighter thief who's good at fighting people who have magic, which I thought was kind of a cool idea, a cool concept. There are a lot of other sources of inspiration, from religious texts to myth and folklore. There are so many kinds. I think maybe one of the questions, if you're thinking of different kinds of media, you might be thinking of comic books. Unfortunately, I don't read much manga or many comic books in general, though I am familiar with characters from some of the more popular ones. And I do occasionally pay an homage to those that have resonated with me. So Watchmen, for example, by Alan Moore, is one comic which I absolutely love. But then on the flip side, I really love Calvin and Hobbes. And that's not really a graphic novel or manga. But I would say it would not be unlikely to see a subtle Easter egg or homage to something like Calvin and Hobbes in my book series, if you're paying attention. I would never make it so obvious that it would distract the reader, but I might make it obvious enough that somebody who really likes Calvin and Hobbes would appreciate the the reference.
Hey, Justin, do you ever have a minimum or maximum word count? That's the next question here.
Does it say for chapters or for the book?
For the book, I'm assuming. It does not say either. We're going to go with the book.
So I think I was originally asked to write this is funny. So 180,000 words is approximately the size of Master of Sorrows. And that's about the size it was when I wrote it for my master's thesis, and that's the size it was when I submitted it. We trimmed some out and added stuff. Trimmed a lot of fat and then added more chapters in the end. So ultimately, the contracts that I sent to people were saying these books are going to be around 180,000 words. Well, Master Artificer is more than that. It's closer to 230, I think, maybe more. I forget, but so that's quite a bit more than I had planned and had expected. And frankly, if I'm being perfectly honest, I expect the next 2 books to be the same amount. They will not be closer to Master of Sorrows, they'll be closer to Master Artificer, which is a challenge for my publishers because that costs them more money to print, and it's not exactly what we agreed to, but these are the stories that I'm writing. So it's either that or I'm writing smaller books, but I'm writing more of them, and I've been contracted to write a tetralogy, which is what I'm attempting to write. So unless people give me permission to start writing a 5-book series or 6-book series for the first set of books, you can expect to continue to see door stoppers about the size of Master Artificer. So do I have a word count in mind? Yes. However, my mind is not about trying to meet a word count by adding content. It's about saying, this is where the book is going to, this is my arc, this is my series arc, this is where I need to be at the end of book 4. So can I get to this point in the next 2 books? Only if I end book 3 by here and book 4 by here, and I cut out this piece and this piece, that's how I look at the series. And I say, okay, I can fit it in, but the books are going to be big. So I need to trim out as much as possible so that it's as tight as possible, so that I'm not taking too long, et cetera, et cetera. So that is really how I approach word count, which is probably strange for most people, most authors. They don't approach their word count that way. They're trying to get a certain number of words in, and they maybe are writing as they go. They're pantsing their stories, etc. But I have these events that I've plotted out for a while, and sometimes I allow myself to go away from the narrative that I plotted because it feels right, feels organic, and that means I either have to find a way to get back on track or develop a new outline for the series that incorporates those new threads, which I've done both of. And in either case, that often adds length. So when you sit down to write the draft of your outline, for me, I always write more than what is in the outline, which means my outlines have to be super lean going in, and they're not usually. That's a problem. So that's how I approach it. I say, okay, I've got this much space. I need to fill it in. Let's see, now my green screen's completely turned off because of the change in the lighting outside. I could probably fix stuff. Anyway, next question while I try and fix it.
Okay. This one comes from Mark, who asks if you have any plans for a spin-off series or short stories based in the same world.
I'm guessing that's my brother-in-law, Mark Purcell. It may not be, but if so, hello, Mark. And if not, hello, Mark, who now is my nominative brother-in-law. I do have plans. There's a character in Master of Sorrows that I mentioned so briefly that people probably don't even know who they are or won't even remember who they are. But if you've read Master Artificer, which some of you have already, here I'm nodding to Nea, who posted her review earlier, and there's probably others too. There is a character named Faith who she had a plot line that I had wanted to stick into Master Artificer, but it didn't fit. And I started to write that, and I saw that I wasn't going to have space for it. And when I realized that, I said, this is the least important thread in relation to Annev, has the least interaction, the least impact on him, and her story can happen in the background, and there's no great loss to the rest of the story. But there's still a bunch of interesting things that I have plotted and imagined and outlined that happen to her, which involve other characters in the series who don't get a lot of screen time. For example, there is a character named Red Thumb and Luathis, who are two Illuminate merrymakers that you meet in Master Artificer. And the way they're introduced, you feel like they're important characters. You might see more of them, and you do see hints of them around the edges here and there throughout the books. Not a lot, but sufficient that there's a reason for them to be there. But if we had Faith's tale, then you would see a whole thread of events involving them, which I think people would like to see. I think they want to see what happens to Faith and what happened to her at the academy and what's going to happen in the background in Master Artificer and other things after Master Artificer that happened to her. So I was hoping to write some novellas in between and sort of release them in between the books. That's not going to happen because my books are big and take a long time to write, and it would be inconsiderate to do that to my readers. However, after book 4, there's a good chance that I will continue to write those chapters that I wrote for Faith, and we could have her own private novel, which would basically be maybe a series of novellas within the novel. And I could also add in some lost chapters that I've hinted at for people who have gotten special editions of the book or letters from me. There are scenes that I've cut out that I could reference. And that's just one example. Red Thumb himself, I have a whole trilogy that I could write based on events that happened to him prior to the events of Master Artificer. Like I said, the world building in here, I have done far too much than is probably sane or sanitary, or I've given myself too much time to develop the world, and I'm too excited about it to not want to share it with people. So if people have sufficient interest in the series and they ask for these things and seem to desire these things, I'm more than happy to do spin-offs, novellas, trilogies, etc. I'm not one of those writers that wants to jump to another series and just keep doing different things. This is the series that I've been wanting to write since I was a kid. And I've got so many interesting characters and stories to share. The challenge is in sharing enough that people are happy with it and not overwhelmed, and also that I'm not teasing them with it. So I have to choose the stories carefully. And in this case, Faith gets less of the spotlight in the current series that is the focus is on Annev, as it rightfully should be. But it would be nice to do a novel for her. I would like that.
Next, we have a question from Richard, who wonders, with an overall potential for 12-ish books, does the entirety of that arc follow Annev and the crew, or is there a follow-up after the fall, in quotes, with new characters?
Yes, and yes. I will. I don't feel bad giving spoilers because number one, there's probably not a ton of people still watching. There's only 18 people watching, I think, right now. So if I tell people something, they can come back and watch this video later and get these spoilers. But and I can always change the things that I tell people. But I will say this: the plots that I have for the 12 books are the first 4 books are the fall. They are about or the rise of the Dark Lord or the fall of the hero, depending on your perspective. And that's what I've promised people. That's what I'm going to give you. You're going to get to the end of the Silent Gods and you will have a Dark Lord who is the hero. And yet, that's not really exploring the full fun of that arc. If we were doing a movie, we would have moved from Act 1 to Act 2, and there is something called the fun and games section, where we get to see, all right, now that the heroes have had the challenge and overcome the threshold, the first threshold, they've got to experience the wider world and interact with it in a way that's kind of amusing to watch. Well, for Annev, we haven't really. I mean, Master Artificer is this in a way, in a microcosm, but in a macrocosmic perspective, he is now a Dark Lord, and we haven't gotten to see much Dark Lording, so to speak. So the second arc, the second tetralogy, is about Annev acting as the Dark Lord. And what are some of the tropes that you associate with the Dark Lord? I'll let you fill in most of those blanks so that I don't spoil things and so that I don't commit to anything. But I will say the biggest thing is Annev would have a hero prophesied to defeat him. So just like in every epic fantasy series, there's a prophesied hero who's going to defeat the Dark Lord. Well, what happens when you're the Dark Lord? What happens when you think you're still the hero of your story? How do you reconcile that? So this is an opportunity to show from the Dark Lord's perspective, and semi-spoiler, not really, some of that will be from the hero's perspective, as it should be. So you get to see that dichotomy, because in a hero's book, it's their perspective and maybe a few glimpses of the Dark Lord. Well, this would be the Dark Lord's perspective and a few glimpses of the hero. And how is that going to resolve itself? If Annev is the hero, how is this going to resolve the arc? So that's sort of the question, the dramatic premise of the second arc. The third one is, and I'm very cagey about how much I say about this because I don't want to spoil things from the second tetralogy. The third one is sort of a rogues gallery of characters from the first tetralogy and the second tetralogy, good or bad, anti-hero or villain. There are characters who are interesting, compelling, that people like, people want to see, that maybe they were invested in Annev and for one reason or another, they became separated, and throughout the course of either the first series or the second, their paths are no longer crossing. The last tetralogy is an opportunity to bring together all of these fun characters that you've seen in the books and that you've been excited to see and invest your time with. And it's almost like a what do they call that, a victory march, when you've gotten to the point where you've earned all of those moments. We get to see all of these fantastic, interesting, compelling characters, dynamic characters, many of them non-traditional, in that they're rogues, they're anti-heroes, they're villains, joining in with Annev and trying to complete a quest. So we have another inversion of the hero's quest and the seven samurai trope. So I'm excited for that. That'll be fun. It'll bring a whole host of new things. But to get to that point, I have to develop these characters and these roles and present these people in a way that you want to see more of them, and I need to earn it. And if I have earned it, then it's going to be super fun. And that's the whole 12 books as I see it. Then if there's anything beyond that, it would not be involving Annev's arc specifically. So that's why I say, will we see more character development from those characters? That last tetralogy is a perfect example of, yeah, we're going to see those fun characters come back, and we're going to see how they've changed and how they've grown and what they've done. And they still have more to grow, as does Annev. And of course, it's more of Annev's arc. But all of these, tetralogy 1, 2, and 3, tie into a greater plot thread, which I'm not going to talk about because it's the greater plot thread and it has to take its time to develop. So right now we're just concerned with books 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's as much as I'll say for now. But yeah, I have all of that planned and I'm super excited to share it with people.
Okay, I've got a couple comments here and then a couple of more questions. I think we have some nice questions to end coming up here, but let's start. I think Neha was referring to something you said earlier when she says here, they say here, I definitely get some Wheel of Time vibes. The Forsaken pulling strings. It's very much like two players revealed in book 2. And Darian says that this is not a question, but that they absolutely love the added details with the maps and breakdown of the magic system at the end. And Sandy, we haven't heard from Sandy tonight. They ask, any favorite locations that you go while you write?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So I thought they were going to say favorite locations in the book. I was like, oh yeah, locations that I write in. So maybe I'll address these in order. So the first question was from the Wheel of Time vibes, the Forsaken. Wheel of Time is a strong influence on my writing. I mentioned Sanderson, and when I do, it's implied, I think, that Sanderson was greatly influenced by Robert Jordan, as you can see in the breadth of his world building, his magic systems to a certain extent. And I would say the same thing. I am heavily influenced by Robert Jordan and the Wheel of Time and the Forsaken. Definitely the Shinar, for example, is sort of an homage to the Forsaken. I think there are 13 Forsaken, and there are 6 Shinar. I didn't want to stick too many people in there because I've got a lot of different forms of villains. We have the Master Avatars and Ancients from the Academy who are interested in finding Annev, who are the Sons of Damnation in Master Artificer. We have the Shinar who are beneath Dortafla, the vampire who has his sort of ulterior motives that may or may not align with Annev's. They may be contrary. They may be seeking to enslave him or control or manipulate him. We have Neru Akanta, the God King of the Terrans, and he has his own host of armies and soldiers and generals. So we have a lot of important characters who can play and do play parts in the series. But for sure, I wanted every book to have a villain who is, well, in this example, one of the Shinar. So we have Oyru, who's in book 1. And even though Tosin's really kind of the greater villain, I think, in Master Artificer, Oyru is a good example of the traditional villain who is fighting Annev, even if we don't understand all of his motives. And in Master Artificer, I'm trying to think how much of this I want to spoil. There is a character. Well, I guess I already spoiled it in the reading. So there's a character called Shaltar, who is a lizard man, who is another one of the Shinar. And like I said, there's 6, so there's at least 4 other characters. And there is one that you see in the book that's not directly referenced. Similar to the Wheel of Time, you'll run into a Forsaken. You don't know who it is, and you're like, I think that might be a Forsaken, but I'm not sure. And then later on, you're like, oh yeah, it was one of the Forsaken, or no, I was completely wrong. I do have things like that in my books, and I won't spoil it. But But you will see some of that in Master of the Fallen. You'll find out some of the answers to that and see more of the Shinar. In fact, the prologue for Master of the Fallen currently is about Chakran. And there is another character who is one of the Shinar who's in the book, which I won't mention because that would be a spoiler. So there's that answers Nea's question. Regarding Sandy, and I should say thank you, Sandy. I think this is my wife's aunt. I could be wrong, but thank you for the question. As far as where I like to write, one of my favorite places to write is the gym, which is ironic. I used to go there regularly, drop off my son in daycare, do some exercising, and then I would write. Sometimes I'd do some boxing, sometimes I'd run on the elliptical, sometimes I wouldn't exercise at all, and I would just write. And so that was one of my favorite places pre-pandemic. Now we're almost out of the pandemic, so that's changed too. I really do like to write outside of my office as much as I will write in my office. That's a great place to edit. But if I'm going to be drafting a story, if I'm writing the first draft, I need to be around people for some reason. Not talking with them, not socializing, but I need to have people around me, like the traditional author at a Starbucks. So sometimes I'll go to the lobby of the gym, or I'll go to the library. That's a little too quiet. I need people talking. I used to go to board game cafes. That was one of my favorites because I'm a gamer. I love board games, so I could see people doing something that I love, which I don't have time to do right now. But it sort of it nourished my soul in a way that made it easier to do the writing. And lately, I think I've gone to my Smith's grocery store, and there is a Starbucks cafe in there where there's a lot of empty tables and they have free Wi-Fi. And I have sort of gravitated towards that spot where I write in Park City. But I'm always looking for places where I can write in public and sort of be around people, because writing is a solitary endeavor and it helps to be surrounded by some kind of activity so you don't feel like you're writing in the void, because that's a hard place to be. So that's to answer Sandy's question. And there was one other question there tied in, I think.
Yeah, it was just a statement
Darian's.
from Darian.
Oh, just the breakdown of the magic system. Yeah. Thank you, Darian. I appreciate that people recognize it's a difficult thing to do, but it makes me immensely satisfied, A, that it works and functions, and B, that I was able to offer people something so that they could visualize and conceptualize what's in my head, which, as you probably guessed, is sometimes difficult to follow in Master Artificer without a visual. And so when I finished writing the book and my editor asked for something to kind of show people what the magic system was like, I was like, oh yeah, I've got an Excel spreadsheet I can send you, and it was very detailed, and this was a screenshot from my Excel sheet, and I sent it to her, and I was like, do you think the publisher could turn this into something really cool and visual, like Brandon Sanderson has in his books? Because I've got all these areas and they kind of overlap, and here's an idea of a sketch. And they were like, oh yeah, great. And of course, evidently publishers don't really do that usually. So they were like, oh, we're just going to take this and stick it in the book. And I said, whoa, wait, hold on. Don't do that. I will get someone to make this amazing. And I did. At the end of the credits for Master Artificer, or actually I think at the beginning of the book right there, you can see the credits, and forgive me, her name slips my mind right now, but fantastic artist who does stuff for RPGs. And she immediately knew what I wanted and incorporated all of it. And it's just a delight to be able to reference that and show it to people.
Okay, these will be the last two, it looks like. I think this one's probably from one of your bigger fans. It's a guy you might know named Graham, who says that he really likes your map. He has a map, too, that has a volcano on it, and wonders if you will ever put any volcanoes in your book maps.
This is my my family conspiring against me. Graham is my 4-year-old son who carries around little Lego maps with him all the time and shows them to people. And one of them has a volcano on it. And so Thank you for that, family, for injecting that into my Q&A for my fantasy novel. There are no volcanoes here. Isn't that weird? It's not like Lord of the Rings where you've got Mount Doom, and Barad-dûr and any of that. There are no volcanoes here. I have mountains, and I have. Oh, you know what I do have though? Down here, right here, Brakewood Ridge. So there's the Kalij Mountains, and Brakewood Ridge is the tallest mountain, and there is something special inside of Brakewood Ridge at the top. And I'm not going to say any more than that, but that would be the closest thing to a volcano. I wouldn't say it is volcano though. I don't think the top is open, though there is a cavern inside. And that's all I'll say.
All right. This is the last one. These guys love you a lot, Justin. This is from a guy I know called Darwin. And
that's my other son. That's my 8-year-old son.
He wants me to mention the story that Darwin made up that talks about the battle between Fantasyland and Halloween Town, and how his writing it influenced your writing of book 2.
I feel like this is my wife asking questions on behalf of my son. And I would not say that. I would not say that it influenced my writing on behalf of book 2. I'm sorry, son, if you're watching this, that would be inaccurate. What I had outlined existed before you were born. But I am sure you have influenced elements of my book. And in fact, there is an Easter egg for Darwin and Graham in the book. If people are paying attention, you are referenced, you are characters. And that's all I will say.
Well, could you just give us a quick little glimpse into what the battle between Fantasyland and Halloween Town was like?
Yeah, so kudos to my son. He wrote this. He had in his mind an idea for. He'd seen the movie Halloween Town. He imagined a world like Halloween Town, and then Fantasyland, which is sort of fantasy characters, traditional dragons and knights and I guess elves and dwarves, that sort of thing. But mostly more monstrous things. And then so Halloween Town and Fantasyland, of course, we've got more of a spooky set of characters like skeletons and zombies and mummies, and then the less spooky, that's more fantastic, like a rock soldier golem character and dragons and stuff. This is the ironic part, because I do have these elements in my series. These do exist. So I wouldn't say they were inspired by my son, because they existed before he wrote the story. But as he was telling me the story, I thought, this sounds like this sounds like the legions of Chios, because I described briefly in book 1 the legions of Chios, and it describes the Nekreikt, the uncreated, who are skeletons and zombies and that sort of thing. There are vampires. My version of vampires, not the traditional one. And there are gargoyles, my version. Golems, giants, ogres. All of the things my son was describing were essentially the legions of Chios and the different factions and generals that make up those armies. And when he was describing this battle, they had generals. The armies had generals and specific characters with specific names that had specific abilities that they would use to fight. I think one of them was Moose, that could shoot spears or javelins. Definitely don't have anything like that in my books. But he wrote this for class, and I did not direct him beyond just asking him questions about telling him to give me more details. So, and I was proud of the details that he put in there that resonated with me in my story, because I thought, I guess it's maybe something indirectly rubbed off, and maybe that's giving me too much credit. I think he's just just as talented in his own right and just as creative.
Well, I'm back. Thanks, man. This has been great. I had a really good time tonight.
As did I.
Thanks for joining us. To everyone out there, the links to both books, Master of Sorrows and Master Artificer, are in the chat. They are both available through Weller Bookworks. We have several there that are signed at the moment, and Justin will gladly come and sign more if and when needed.
If people order them from you guys, give them your name and anything you want in there, and I will do it. I will put it in there. I love that.
That sounds good. We want to thank all of you for joining us this evening, wherever you may be. And once again, Justin, thanks. It's been a joy as it was last time, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And perhaps, folks, we might see him a little sooner than the next book. We'll see. Anyhow, thank you, Justin. Thanks to all of you. Have a good night. Thank you.